name is John, and I might be a nobody, but I have actually touched a genuine Rembrandt. Now, this might be of no import to you, but I thought, well, this is the only opportunity I will ever have to touch a real Rembrandt, so I'll do it. I was in the cellar of somebody I knew who collected art, and he'd actually bought the Rembrandt at a flea market. Now, this sounds like a cheap novel or a cheap Hollywood film, but it's actually a true story. He'd gone to the flea market and recognized that the canvas was old. He'd bought it, and when he got home, the back of the canvas had been painted over, and he expertly removed the paint, and underneath was a Rembrandt. Anyway, we're back in Berlin for this one in the 90s, and it's the art world. I was always very impressed with German artists, starting from Albrecht Dürer, who you might remember. He was famous for painting Hasen, hares, not this kind of hair, but the rabbit kind of hair. And later on, you had the great Otto Dix or Beckmann, both wonderful painters. But by the time I got to Berlin, obviously, things had changed and the whole art world had changed. The Americans and the CIA had discovered that they could not compete during the Cold War with the Russians. The Russians had a style of very realistic paintings. So they came up with the idea of, I don't know if they invented modern art or abstract art, but they came up with the idea of pushing that kind of abstract art on the West. So you had people like, in the States, people like Jackson Pollock, who was inspired by watching his father pee in the snow, apparently, and he'd drip, paint onto canvases, and that was his thing. In Germany, you had a man called Joseph Beuys, who was very, very influential, and his thing was, well, we'll leave that out, but it was a lot to do with wax and this kind of thing. Joseph Beuys had actually volunteered for the Luftwaffe and had been a rear gunner on a Stuka dive bombing aeroplane, which was not powered by a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz engine, like most of the Luftwaffe planes were, and the companies are still going, and maybe you drive around in a BMW or a Mercedes. As far as I know, they do not come with machine guns or bombs anymore. But anyway, so we're back in Berlin. It's the beginning of the 90s, and it was a weird time for art. They had a huge budget in Berlin. I think I read somewhere that their budget for art was bigger than the entire United States. So you'd go to an exhibition, and the big thing at the time was piles of stones. I don't know if they were all done by the same person or there were different people making these piles of stones. But you'd see them in, proper galleries, and national galleries and expensive galleries. And they were somehow magic stones because you were not allowed to touch them because they turned into art, So, you'd have different pile of stones, and that was the big thing at the time. The other big thing was to have paintings on canvases, like a Rembrandt, that were actually nothing. I mean, they were just one color, so maybe they were blue or black or red, but that was it. So offend you? I hope not. Anyway, a fascinating time to be in Berlin and to be part of that whole scene, which I later, well, I was an outsider, like I still am, so I had a lot of exhibitions in the part of Berlin where I was living, and I never, things, people liked the stuff. In my final exhibition in Berlin, Neukölln, over 4,000 people came to see that exhibition, and I still have the book with the comments from the people who come. So I wasn't completely unknown, but I was not at the top level, you know, of the stone builders, whatever, the pile of stones. I never was into that. So it was a strange time because you'd go to a basement somewhere, there'd be a little series of outside little lines of tea lights, you know, little candles, and you'd walk down the steps into the musky smelling cellar, and they'd have an exhibition there. And sometimes it was interesting. I used to go down there, you know, hoping to see a pile of stones. But sometimes there were, in fact, interesting things going on, weird stuff. And I was into weird stuff in those days. But the whole vibe was strange. It was all very illegal and not as regimented as it is these days, with things like fire escapes. And everything was kind of a bit Wild Westy, you know. It was a time of great freedom in many senses. And somehow a magic place to be, Berlin, at that time. Anyway, I still don't remember which finger I used to touch the Rembrandt. This might have been this one, might have been that one. But I hope you enjoyed this, and a very tiny, short clip about the history of art in Germany. And you take care of yourselves and those you love, and I hope to see you in the next one. Okay? Bye then, and tschüssikowski.